You will notice the reason why I put my email address up there is because going through, I'm going to talk about some articles and things, and if you email me, and wait, because at the moment I'm really busy, and wait, I will email you some of these articles that will add on to what I'm talking about. So that's why I put that up there, and I'm really open to doing that, because the more learning you get, the better you understand what I'm talking about. Now, I'll just do an extra little introduction. I was a teacher for years and years and years, and my last teaching that I did, I was at a high decile school, and I'm reflecting what I did in my classroom with high decile children in terms of the work that I do with Māori and Pacifica. I am a Cook Islander, despite my white skin. So I have a foot in two camps. I have the foot that is in one camp in terms of European father and a Cook Island mother. So I am really lucky to be able to go into schools, understand what children are saying in another language, and tell them that their minister wouldn't like what they're saying. You know, it's very good for controlling children very quickly. Okay, so what are we doing? Today, we're actually going to be talking about doing mathematics. So my focus is that in most classrooms in mathematics, teachers do the talking. And that regardless of whether we think that's true or not, it happens. And it happens in every classroom. And there are times when teachers should do the talking. But there are times when children should be doing the talking. And that's not as easy as you might imagine, to get children to do the talking. So I'm talking today about why. Why should they be doing the talking? Because learning mathematics is not this individual process that we kind of have suggested to us about mathematics. Mathematics is not one whole complete bank of knowledge that files itself in your head all by yourself. Mathematics is about understanding bits and connecting the dots. It's about getting an idea today, losing it tomorrow, and finding it again next month when you connect it to something else. It's the aha moments, right? And one of the things that I always start when I'm teaching with my students is that if you as a child or you as an adult think you're no good at mathematics, blame your teacher, right? Or not blame your teacher, blame how you were taught. And that's not necessarily the teacher's fault, it's what the teacher thought mathematics was. The teacher thought mathematics was this one whole body of knowledge, and children think the same. Lots of children think the bright ones are the ones who can do mathematics. Well, actually, every child can read and every child can do mathematics if they're taught in ways that develop that. So in New Zealand, we've got to get rid of this whole concept of maths is for the bright children. And we've got to be saying every child can do maths. So how do we get there? We need all of the children in our classrooms to be involved in communicating what they're thinking. Have to be able to do it out loud. We also need them to be involved in something called argumentation practices. And argumentation practices has a media connotation of not a very nice thing to do. Our children read the whole concept. Like if I go into a classroom and I say, come on, you argue your maths, the children look at me like I'm an alien from outer space to even suggest that, because they get told to be good, to cooperate, to work together. They don't get told that actually to be a really good mathematician, you have to argue. You have to reason it out. Argue with yourself, argue with other people. Don't accept what somebody says. Don't do it out of politeness, which is what lots of children think you need to do in a maths classroom. But through participating in talk, students develop rich, connected understandings. The other component of the maths talk that is tied up to mathematical knowledge is something that I call mathematical practices. Now, these are what good problem solvers can do. Lots of children who are good problem solvers implicitly use mathematical practices. They do it. It's there. It's visible for them. It's not visible for all children. And actually accessing these mathematical practices, that's the job of the teacher, to help those children do it, the ones that don't get it. So these practices refer to the specific things that successful mathematics learners and users do. Can you think about what are some of those things that they do? Have you got any idea? Oh, here I go, I'm going to ask somebody over here. Just to be really mean. No, I won't. Can you talk to people next to you and think about what are some of those, even if you just come up with one or two practices you think you have to be able to do as a mathematical doer, a user. What are the things that you have to be able to do?
Concepts and relationships into something more symbolic.
Yeah. So
quantitative.
So when you say symbolic, you're talking about representing what you're thinking about.
Well, I'm talking about also identifying operations.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I'll just keep moving because I've got a lot to do, but I'm now going to put up some of the core mathematical practices. Just check whether you got these. First one, mathematical explanation. That's an argument. That's when you say to a child, what's 3 and 4? And they say 7. They say 3 and 4 are 7 because 3 and 3 are 6 and 1 more is 7. That's a mathematical explanation. It's not conceptual, but it is an explanation. Right? They've said it's a conjecture. Now that word conjecture, all children should use. It's a word I would be introducing to my children. I did my class when I taught. My children used to say, can I make a conjecture? A conjecture is not a guess. It's an educated, argument that I'm going to lay out here, but I'm open now to discuss it. Right? So that's the first one, mathematical explanation. That's the second one. So if a child says 3 and 4 are 7, because I've got 3 of these and 4 of these, and if I put them together and I add them all up, they equal 7, somebody might say, how do you know that? So they say, because I went 3 and 3 are 6, and 1 more is 7. So they justified it. So the second level, the first level is making a mathematical explanation. And no children can go to justification until they can make an explanation. And developing children's skills of making a mathematical explanation is not easy. It's a lot of work. So justifying is when you get them to agree and disagree. And then you go from mathematical explanations to justification and argumentation. Go back to that, I just said it's all about agreeing and disagreeing. Children, if you said, so-and-so says 3 and 4 are 7, do you agree or disagree? The children look at you and they say, does she agree or disagree? The teacher, don't they? That's what they do. That's because they think that they have to agree. And if the teacher's questioning, that's because the teacher doesn't necessarily think they were right. Right? So you have to teach children to agree and disagree. You have to do it in ways that make it safe. So you have to examine it, just like I did. How do you know? So you say things like, you need to think about whether you're going to agree or disagree, but you have to have a reason. Then you say, and it's completely correct. So you might give them a completely correct piece of information, and then you say, right, thumbs up if you agree, thumbs down if you disagree, thumbs that way if you don't know. Heaps will go that way. because you haven't given them any indication. So then you say, right, no more of that. You've got to go that way or that way, and you've got to have a reason. Right? So, okay, I agree because they're away. So never let children just agree. Never say, hands up all those who agree. Because they'll just agree with the brightest child in the room, the kid that's having the birthday party, all sorts of reasons. And you. So, and of course, what I'm talking about here is not necessarily maths, is it? I'm talking about all of this floats across to literacy as well. Now, generalisations, until children can develop a mathematical explanation, can justify it with another explanation, often they can't generalise. And if they don't generalise in a maths lesson, they haven't done maths. So that's, generalising is thinking about lessons instead of a lesson. It's getting the core mathematical ideas that go across everything and connecting them. So it's dealing to the big maths ideas. And it's a mathematical practice that children who find maths easy often jump to without you even realising they've done it. So you get the child who'll say, oh, I've just thought of something. If you add two, any numbers, if you multiply any number by 2, it always becomes an even number. That's a generalisation. You hear children say that. We often miss opportunities to pick up on it, but they're usually big maths ideas that the children are saying. They're generalising something that's worth investigating. Don't have to investigate it right then, but it's worth tucking away and putting up the next day for a class discussion. Is it true or not? This is another one. Representations. Being able to represent what you're thinking about with materials, with drawings, with acting it out, with symbols, all of those. And you need to do a representation for 2 reasons. One is to explain what you're thinking, but the other reason that you do a representation is to justify. So it's explain and justify. Children aren't necessarily good at representing what they're thinking. They need to be carefully taught. And using mathematical language correctly, like that word conjecture I just said, that's a mathematical practice. Being able to use the words that relate to maths in ways like, it drives me crazy when I go into a classroom and I hear children talking about, oh, I'm tidying that. That term drives me crazy. I always say, you're not tidying anything. That's like getting a broom and sweeping it all in. In fact, if they're not using good mathematical language saying tidying, they're just using pigeon talk, I think. In fact, they should be saying, I am making it to the nearest 10 or 100. Right? That's using mathematical language correctly. And if you go into some of the low decile schools where I go and you hear the kids saying all of the things that this sort of numeracy speak has built, you would cringe too, because they haven't got a clue what they're really doing. They grasp what they've heard. Tidying? Oh, I'm doing this. They're just trying to shut you down as the teacher, actually. Okay, my other thing that I want to talk about today is group work. Now, that group work is taken as normal by many New Zealand teachers. So, we use it. It's used widely in classroom programs and is most often in maths, used with streamed groups. Because if you teach a strategy group, it's streamed. And if you have your strategy groups up on the wall, you've got a streamed group up there. And the country that is most successful at maths in the world is Finland, and it's against the law to stream. It's an interesting one, isn't it? So I'm going to go through now, and so while I'm saying we've got to think again about grouping, I'm also saying that you need to use grouping, but I'm going to suggest different ways. Why? Why do we need to use grouping? Because in small groups, children are able to think again about what they're thinking and reconstruct what they're thinking. They have a chance, and it's an opportunity to do it. They're able to talk about their mathematical ideas in that small group. They listen to other people talking, they critique it, and they listen to themselves. And the more children learn to talk, the better they become at critiquing their own reasoning. And that third point I've got there about providing students with opportunities to practice is a really core necessity in a classroom. There are some children who need the opportunity to practice in a small group before they're ever going to talk in a big group. So small group work is essential for that. And the last one is, why do teachers want to use small group? Because it makes thinking visible and available for teachers to understand, build on and extend. If you go into a small group and you sit there and you listen to what children are talking about, you've got something to build on. You can hear and you can respond. So children have to be talking for you to hear and respond. And they will do it more readily in a small group. And this is actually quite a core, this is in under the teachers or key competencies or somewhere, but I think it's really an important statement in the curriculum document, because it's doing what I'm talking about here. And past it. Look, any moment or any time, please just say, hey, what about? You know, if you want to ask something. But I wonder how many people have actually seen that and thought, what does that mean? Because what that's really, or thought, that applies to me in mathematics and what I'm doing in mathematics.
Bobby, if you go back a slide.
Yep, sure.
No, it's the slide before that. When you sort of, okay, say it now. It's the slide before that.
Oh, yeah.
That list of practices, I want you to add into it something like explore, play.
Oh, absolutely. Those.
Your succeeding slides have got that element.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, totally. Those are just 5 practices, but there are more. There are things like being able to select what the operation, you know, that's another practice, being able to recognise and select the operation that matches the problem. But there's also being able to explore in logical ways patterns and, you know, there's a whole lot of others. So you're right. Those were just the practices that I focused on because I actually thought that the 5 of those went together very powerfully as a layer to begin with, and that in that case. But no, I think there are multiples that need to be explored as well. So I agree with you. Can I go back now? Okay, so having talked about this, having talked about the importance of group work, the importance of talking, what's the problem? The problem is many students are excluded through lack of verbal skills, right? They're not confident about speaking out or prefer to remain passive. A whole group of children, and the older they are, the more they do it, they believe their role is to listen to the teacher. They really believe it. Right? They believe that they can't do mathematics because they're poor listeners. That's the kind of concepts they build up. They also, if you start making them explain and question and do a whole lot of this, they will start bucking and saying, that's your job, you're the teacher. Right? They won't necessarily you're going to get that best, but one of the teachers who worked with me changed from one school to another, and I went to see him in his new school. And I had a whole lot of ministry from Singapore actually watching him teaching in this way. And he was working with this new class, and it was actually in a high decile school. He'd moved from a low decile to a high decile school, and there were a group of girls working together, and I said to them, they were sort of doing something, and I said randomly, so how are you enjoying having your new teacher? And he'd been there a term or so, and these girls went, oh, it's all right. And he was really fantastic. So I said, oh, so you just think he's all right? What's the problem? Well, he makes us do the talking instead of him doing the talking. That's what they said. That's our aim. Yeah. And they were quite definitely, quite disturbed about this, So that's those children. They believe their role is to listen, not ask questions or argue. And there's also the misunderstandings of culturally valued knowledge, skills, abilities and values. So I think that there's a lot of PC gone wrong. I think that we tend to overdo it in ways, and I speak from a Pacifica point of view. I think that we tend to say if a child doesn't want to answer and they're Pacifica, that's because they don't like speaking in a public place. We tend to sort of excuse that, and I think that we have to be upfront about that and say that if you're going to learn mathematics, you use a particular voice. And in this classroom, this is the voice you use. You ask questions, you do this, you do that. Instead of saying, oh, well, it's part of their culture, because it's not part of their culture. If you ever go and you go onto a marae and you listen, or I attend family meetings, and at my family meetings, there are protocols. Like my mum, if I'm at a family meeting and my mum is there, I would never speak without making sure that what I was going to say fitted with what she would say, because I represent my family in whatever I say. But with these children, I think that we've let them off the hook too much by not actually making them step up to the plate. Right? So our role as a teacher is to meet these children's needs.
Could you also say it's like creating a culture within your classroom in your school? That, it's different cultures and values within.
Yep, it is absolutely. But it's also being able to understand the Pacifica learner, have that knowledge of who is this Pacifica or Māori learner or Indian learner, or, because there aren't just Māori and Pacifica learners who might be more passive and retiring, right? But Pacifica children understand that when they're at church, there's a voice for that. When they're outside the church, there's another voice. When they're playing rugby, there's another voice. All you're doing is introducing another voice, the maths voice. Otherwise, they just sit. So, why? Why am I concerned about this? Because patterns of interaction, how they interact, mediate their identity and disposition. And so you get that whole concept of, I'm not a good listener. My job is to listen hard to the teacher. It is not to ask questions. So you've got to get the concept, your job is actually to ask questions, even if they're only in your head. And through practices associated with the field of school maths, and I'm making a very clear point here about school maths, people accept the non-random failure of significant numbers of students from marginalised social groups. I can give you statistics that say that when Pacifica children and Māori children are focused on specifically in culturally responsive ways, they level peg with every other kid. So it's nothing to do with poverty and nothing to do with hunger. It's to do with meeting their specific needs in specific and Pacific ways. And my last point is that we keep talking about the 21st century and we're a knowledge society. School, if you start to look at what's coming out from the ministry and so on, you'll see school's no longer in that sorting. We're no longer sorting for jobs. You get to go to university, you get to go to there, you get to go to there. We're now saying everybody has to have equitable access. Our jobs changed as teachers. There's been a big shift. National standards is all about that. National standards are no longer saying it's okay for the good old curve. National standards are saying you've all got to get them all above the standard. Every child has to be able to be numerate and literate. So can you see what I'm talking about here in this shift? It's a shift in focus that's been very subtle, but it's there. And that's why we've got to attend to the 40% that are underachieving. Now, this slide, what we're really saying here is Pasifika students are making good progress when measured in relative gains. This is a SOP. The word relative. Relative to who? Other Pasifika learners. Oh yes, they're doing really well. But look at the absolute progress and they're doing really badly. And it hasn't reversed. So we're still getting this gap is widening. So therefore, we have to do some more things. And, you know, while I'm talking about Pasifika children, because that's the group that I most often work with, I don't exclude Māori children. I don't exclude other cultural groups of children who are not doing well in some of our low decile schools, and I don't exclude all the children who are not doing well in some of our high decile schools. So what I've done is I've done 3 iterations now of a classroom-based design study. And basically this is what I did. I set up with teachers a community of inquiry. The community of inquiry involved the teachers and me in one community, and the other community was the teachers and their children in a community of inquiry, a mathematical inquiry. So it's 2, and they both go hand in hand. The first iteration that I've done, we developed a smart tool which you're going to get the best exemplar. Where was that one? You've got it. It's at the back of there. But as I said, if you want to email me, I've now redeveloped it, of course, which is what happens. You know, working with... So the first one, I worked with a school of teachers, and that's what we developed in the school of teachers, building those mathematical practices. The second iteration, I worked in 2 schools with 2 teachers from 4 teachers from 2 different schools, and now I'm working with, well, next year it'll be 32 teachers because I've got 4 schools, and the schools have become all Pasifika Decile 1A, and the kids are tracking where all of those schools seem to track. They all get to stage 4, and you'll find at year 3, the children are at stage 4, and at year 4, a little group get to stage 5, and at year 6, a little group might be at stage 5, and they're all at stage 4, and at year 7, we might have a few children who are at stage 6, but most of them are still at stage 4. So they successfully stay at stage 4 for years, right? That's actually the reality of where they get to. The first, that was the absolute what happened in the first school, and the children made, in 1 year that I worked there, we put this framework into place and everything, got the children talking, didn't do much writing. They ended up making about 3-4 years maths progress. Came up, way up. Some of them made 5 years, 6 years. I suspect that they always were able to do that, but they never spoke and nobody heard them. So nobody could tell what they really could do. The second iteration, we took notice, the second time, we took notice of not just numeracy stages, but their PAT stainlines and their, in terms of reading and maths, and the stainlines all went up, a couple, three stainlines. The children, now stainlines should stay the same from one year to the next. Children, all the stainlines jumped. So their strategy stages jumped, likewise that. And now the group that I've got now, I've only been working with the two schools and since July, and they've just done PATs again, and in that space of time, the stainlines have all gone up some children had gone up 5 stainlines. How can you do that? And it's probably because the children are having to talk, question, argue, read problems, all sorts of things. So, what did I see every time my first beginning point? Pre-planned numerical strategies, taught procedurally. So, yes, they were doing the numeracy project. Doing is the operative word. They had a strategy, they taught it. If children are always at stage 4 and taught at stage 4, they're repeatedly learning the same thing, and never. The discussion followed what I call an IRE, that's a researchy type. It's the teacher would question, the teacher would say who answered, and then the teacher would evaluate what they said in response. Students always responded to questions but didn't ask extra questions, didn't shift the discussion, just answered what they were asked to do. And all of these schools use streaming because they use strategy groups. Okay, now this is the communication and participation framework, and I've only put a couple of levels on it. But I have always worked in phases, so phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So you've got making conceptual explanations, and then going across into phase 1, you've got use the problem context to make explanation experientially real. There you've got problem context. So suddenly, no longer are they allowed bare numbers. We're now talking about write those numbers. So what the teachers basically did was use the number properties. If you want to teach the children or you want them to get a strategy, develop a particular strategy, use the number properties to write a word problem, and then let the children come up with their own strategies. And if the strategy that matched those numbers didn't come up, you are a participant, you introduce it. But at the end, not at the beginning. So reverse the process. So and those are these are things teachers can expect the children to do. And these are the things that you can expect in terms of participation. Now, this is my sense of a lesson in these classrooms. Children are not grouped in strategy groups. They are mixed ability groups, deliberately, right? The teachers mostly teach half a class one day, half the class the other day, purely for management. So say you've got 12 children, they've got 24 children. They often have about that number because kids are away, kids are in transition, there's all sorts of reasons. 12 one day, 12 the next day. Those 12 children are then split into 3 groups of 4. They're mixed ability, 3 groups of 4. The teacher gives them the problem, launches the problem. Launching is really important because in launching the problem, they talk about what is in that actual problem, not telling them how to do it, but getting the children to pick out the key ideas. And this is why I suspect the stay lines have gone up. Because when you launch a problem that's a word problem, and you have something like one of the problems I saw the other day, a teacher was teaching in this project, had something about the children were going to have a visiting school group. So they made the lolly-A's, the lolly-A's and so she said they needed so many lollies to make so many A's. They were expecting 68 group children or something. How many lollies did they need to make sure they had to make the A's? So she at each A uses 16 lollies. How many lollies do we need? Now there are key words when you hear that problem. Each is one of them. How many? Each, 18, 68, but not multiplication. Nobody was, in launching that problem, not tell them this is how you're going to do it. Because if a child says, oh, I'm going to multiply, everybody multiplies. So you haven't got a rich discussion. You've lost it. Right? Similarly, another teacher had one about coconut trees and how they'd plant, when the trees in the playground had been, or when a coconut tree had been planted, it was already 5 metres. 7 years later, it is now however many, 27 metres or something. How many metres has it grown over those years? Right? Now that's actually a tricky question, because that's a change unknown question. So to get those children to actually deal with those numbers, she got them to visualise the tree in their heads. So this is launching a problem. What's the tree look like? What size is it? You could see the kids going, oh. Now, if she hadn't done that, I suspect they would have just added the numbers together. That's all. But she launched it so they could take it apart. So launching is really important if you're doing this kind of work, because launching it gives access for all children if you've got mixed groups. Right? The other thing that is there is this framework of questions and prompts, because you need to teach the children what questions match. Like if somebody gives a mathematical explanation, they need to know what question a child needs to ask to make sense of it. So deliberate focus on developing children's ability to question an explanation. What did you do in that part? What number, where did you get that number from? Those very precise questions. Then you've got the justification. Why does that work? Often children stop dead at the questions for mathematical explanation, but we really need to get our children asking those questions for justifying and generalising. These are in this framework. Okay. So another progress in this iteration that I've been doing, this is the new introduction really that we've focused on. In that first round, we developed that framework. But now we're using these cognitively demanding, group-worthy tasks. Now, they have to be cognitively demanding. One of the things that I keep finding is that teachers use numbers that are too little. Don't challenge the children. So what if they can't do it? Leave them stranded. That's called maths, right? And parallel tasks, so we've worked on developing some of these group-worthy tasks, or parallel tasks, set within the children's known cultural and social context. So I just told you 2 problems, didn't I, that tied directly. The effect of not using cultural tasks. I went into a classroom the other day where a teacher had this problem, all Pacifica learners in front of her, and it said something like, Mona has so many hens. If each hen lays so many eggs in their nest, how many eggs are laid? Well, these kids sat there and I bent down next to them and she was going to start to launch, and I bent down and there was a little group of girls. They said, what's that word? And it was Mona. So I said, just say Moana. And they said, but you need an A. Yeah, that's right, but just call it Moana, don't worry about it. They were happy then. Choice number 1, word, Mona. Tell me which kid knows the word name Mona, unless it was somebody in the classroom. It wasn't. So, the second thing, Pacifica kids. If you've ever been to a Pacifica place, you will realise in the different islands, the chickens run wild. These kids had no concept about these hens laying eggs in tidy nests. Just doesn't work. And they were saying it. They were saying, this is stupid. why are these hens laying them all in these little tidy nests? See? Culturally, change it. So find out about your children. And I was saying, if your children are from the Philippines, I was in a school where half the children were from the Philippines. And I just said to the kids, so what do you do when you go out for a special, we go to Jollibees, right? Yes, somebody recognises Jollibees. So, yes, we go to Jollibees. What do you eat there? Spaghetti, fried chicken. What drink do you drink? Lally lally. What's lally lally? Well, it's this drink. What's it made of? I wrote some good problems immediately. So you kind of have to hear what your children are saying. And there's my mixed ability. But that's a teacher's job, orchestrating mixed ability, small group and large group class discussions which build on student contributions to support their understanding of key mathematical ideas. Here I am back to it again. I don't care about a strategy, I care about the key mathematical ideas that underpin it, like the distributive property, the associative property, all of those things. They are key mathematical ideas that lay the foundation for our children to go to high school and do algebra. And I mentioned this word parallel task because this has been the most powerful thing for these children. It's writing that necklace one that I just told you about, but writing it 3 times and changing the numbers. So that the first time they are numbers that everybody can access. The second time they push up. And the third time they're getting out of reach. Give the children a choice. Which one do you want to start on? Most often, at the beginning, they start on the first one and go to the third one. Almost in a lesson, they go from stage 4 to stage 6. Right? And that's exactly what the teachers say. They say, look at this, they're doing stage 6. And I think to myself, yeah, if they'd ever had those numbers before, right? So it's that whole using the context and getting those parallel tasks. I want to actually jump to a couple of other things that help to set all of this up. So this is the other key, is these 5 practices. So this is what I've used in the schools, is these 5 practices to plan and structure the teaching, because suddenly I've taken away all of that nice, neat, tidy planning they used to have, haven't I? Because I've said, use one good problem in a lesson, no more. Take a group for 40 minutes, starting from year 2 up, right? So you do a good warm-up and a good warm-down, and do 40 minutes with one group. Remember, you're teaching them every second day, right? But you're planning. So this is the first thing. Anticipate. If you get a good problem, like that problem I gave you with the multiplication, anticipate every possible strategy the children might come out with. Right? That's what you do for your planning, is anticipate what is going to come out, and even think, so what's the big maths idea in this? Okay, as the groups work, monitor. The teachers that I work with have a notebook. They have the problem, the possible strategies they're going to come out with, or a bigger book. And on the other side, if that suits them, they go round and monitor and record what the different strategies are that come out. If you're working with Pacifica children, they often only use partitioning because it's what's used at home a lot. So that's the initial strategy that a lot of these kids will do. So they monitor. They know which group is going to come out with what. So no longer are they going around the groups teaching. That's why you launch the problem too, so you don't have to keep running around the groups helping them get started. So you launch it so that everybody can get started. Then, teacher job, select which group is going to share first, which group is going to share second, which group is going to share third, or not at all. So you select for a variety of reasons. Often you'll select, in that multiplication problem, it'll be the children who used addition, repeated addition, because multiplication is repeated addition, big idea coming through there. So you'd start at repeated addition because it gives access to everybody, and then go to the more sophisticated. So sequencing, that's what I'm just talking about. And then the final 10 minutes of that 40 minutes should be spent in connecting. Who can say what is the same about that, different about these strategies? This is when you get to the associative property, the distributive property, and all of those, the commutative, all of the different big ideas that come out in maths. And what's the result? The more you do this, the more you develop your teacher pedagogical knowledge. If you have people like the teachers that I work with are not necessarily mathematically able. They have gaps in their knowledge as well. And that's what I find. So what happens is they develop it. They build that mathematical knowledge. It's amazing. And this is what, if you email me and ask, I've got a chapter in a book that describes this, you see. That's one of the things that... But it also helps everybody focus on the big maths idea that's going to come out of that lesson. But I just have watched people's maths blossom, the teachers I'm talking about, by working through those 5 practices. I'm going. This is my other one. You've got to focus on how you're going to set up that small group activity. And one of the things is that here in New Zealand, we're very good about our whole idea of a collective. New Zealanders have this whole concept of collective, but often children interpret groups as a collection of individuals. You really want them to focus on it as a collective. So you want to be saying things like the Olympic Games was great because of all our paddlers and things. We could say, if somebody doesn't go at the same speed, what happens? Or somebody goes the wrong way, you tip over. There were things like that. So you've got to build the whole sense of that, but that also builds on Māori Pacifica cultural sense of collectivism. And that threads through all of New Zealand, I think. You've got to set up those expectations that they listen, and you've got to have clear rules about what constitutes respect and disrespect. Body language in this country is huge with kids. And I'm not going to go through, I'm just going to whip through this now so that... But if you email me, I'll also send you an article on talk moves, which you and the children should learn to use. Other one, motivational discourse. We as teachers have to become really good about this if we expect children to work well in groups. So we've got to be saying things that affirm learning behaviour, like risk-taking with thinking. Wow, that was great thinking. Or what a good question. That was the right question for the right moment. That kind of thing. When they support each other as community members. And this really has to work for your lower ability children. When these things, so if you say, or because, if you hear your children saying that, they are using argument. You've got to be vigilant about this. instead of saying, so-and-so is saying, you need to say, so the reasoning you're using is, you've got to get that away from the child making the error to the actual reasoning. And that's what we were just, this whole awareness of student comments, older children are really good at negative body language. Yeah. Now I'm just going to go right, I just want to, this, and with your less able children, this whole idea of positioning children, so hearing them and making sure everybody hears them actually disrupts that traditional view of what is good at mathematics. So it gives space for the thinker. And I just wanted to end with a couple of quotes from children. It's a lovely quote, isn't it? Yeah. And this other one. This is the last, so. Now that child who said that quote at the end of the year was stage 4, at the beginning of the year, year 8, and was stage 8 at the end of the year, year 8. Okay? And that's what she said. You know. Okay, questions? But we're just about finished anyway. Have you got any questions? I've gone really fast, I'm sorry, but I hope I've given you some kernels to think about. Have you got any questions?
Probably in the last 10 years we've had a tremendous culture around learning and teaching.
Ah, yeah.
Would you like to make any comments?
Yeah, well, you can subvert learning intentions or convert or revert. I'm not sure how to put it. No, I'll take back subvert and say convert. If you tell the children, like it is said in the numeracy book, we are learning to count backwards by something or other. If you say that, you are instantly telling them how to do it, which is part of my launching. So what you do is, yes, they do. And you know, I could have shown you some pictures, some video clips of a couple of teachers using learning intentions, saying, we are learning to work in a group and ask questions which, right? We are learning to develop multiple answers or multiple strategies for a multiplication problem. Get what I'm saying? So you go like that, widen it. Yeah, I think children do need to come into a maths lesson with a reason. You know, that's the whole reality. They need to come into a maths lesson with a reason. But I think that you can use learning intentions to set real goals instead of just school goals, real maths goals. Because I think we've narrowed it. And I think now, and I asked this particular teacher recently about that because she had, we are learning to work in a group, and then she had donk, 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 donk. And I said to her, what are all those? She said, that's our success criteria. And it was, ask questions that begin with, can you convince me? She had a list of questions. Be able to restate what somebody in my group said. She had a whole lot of things. They were great. They were brilliant. Gosh, if every child could do that, you know, and her children were doing it. So does that help? Yeah.
Can I want to ask a question, but I'm scared to ask because I'm going to sound like a stick in the nose.
No, do.
In my head, I'm struggling with having kids in the same group who have got word and doing percentages and decimals and integers with children who are just working with numbers to 100 at the moment. Sort of.
What age group have you got? Yeah, okay. So you've got, you see, in my own classroom, I didn't teach with groups. Okay, and and all the numeracy people in here can tell you that the original numeracy work was done in my classroom. So all the beginnings, investigation, exploration at the beginning of the numeracy was actually done. A lot of it was done in my classroom. So and I didn't teach in groups. So, but what I did was I clearly said what I was teaching. So today I am going to be teaching da da da. If you think that's for you, then you need to be there. Now, some of the teachers I work with do exactly that now. They put up the problems. These are the problems. If you think that it suits you, you need to be there. But I'm the adult. So if you and you and you don't come, you are. Sorry. Because I'm the teacher and I'm paid and you're not. There's all sorts of reasons. So do you see? And also too, with your parallel problems, I would be saying if you're teaching fractions, decimals and percentages, and you've got a group that are dealing with numbers to 100, then they're not wanting to be going to there because your parallel problems are going to take. So you're going to have those children not in that group that day. But there's lots of times when they can be, and particularly those more able children really do like, and they're the ones who make the most progress actually. The children who have the ability are the ones that jump because they are having to re-explain, think through, and they talk about it as how powerful it is. But there is quite a lot of work that's been done, research, that shows that when you get a child who is not as able as others in dealing with fraction numbers, and I've got quotes and things from children, it's those children that ask the most questions who make everybody think. Right? So they actually do contribute. It's that whole positioning of them as starting the thinking going. So you see, you need to play around with grouping, but not have the strict grouping. Imagine how graunching it is. For me, I go in and I hear somebody say, I've got 5 groups. And I think, give over. And those children have been in that group forever. And they've only ever done adding and subtracting because they've never got to multiplication because teachers think they're additive. I mean, I ban the teachers I work with from doing more than 4 weeks on adding and subtracting. 4 weeks adding and subtracting, then you start multiplication. That's only just to force them to go into that. Right? But I would actually do that. I would say, do it later. Because you've got to be able to add and subtract to do multiplication, so you learn it. There you are. It's just me. Yeah. I just think expectations, put them really high, and our children will do so much better. Yeah.